The crack of Liam Blackburn's belt echoed through the modest ranch house, followed by Lucy Blackburn's muffled cry. 17-year-old Lucy crouched in the corner of her bedroom, arms raised to shield herself from another blow. Her blue calico dress already stained with a drop of blood from her split lip. Outside the window, the golden California sunset painted the dusty hills of Redding with amber light, oblivious to the storm raging within the Blackburn home. No daughter of mine will shame this family by running around with that no-good drifter. Liam roared, his weathered face contorted with rage beneath his gray-streaked beard. Ethan Lawson is trash, and you'll forget him if I have to beat every thought of him out of your foolish head. Papa, please, Lucy sobbed, her long chestnut hair falling across her face. I love him. He's a good man, the belt whistled through the air again. Good man, Liam spat. He's a saddle tramp with nothing to his name but that mangy horse and rusty six-shooter. The Blackburns own half the cattle in Shasta County. You think I built all this to see my only daughter throw herself away on some cowpoke who won't be alive come winter? Lucy tasted copper in her mouth but held her father's gaze. At 18, she had her mother's delicate features but none of her docile temperament. Ethan's taking a job with the railroad. He's saving to buy land. I forbid it. Liam's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Tomorrow you'll start packing. You're going to your Aunt Martha's in Sacramento until you come to your senses. Long after her father had stormed out, Lucy remained huddled on the floor, tears streaming down her face. Through the open window, she could hear the night chorus of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Her hand reached for the small silver locket hidden beneath her dress, Ethan's parting gift before he'd ridden south to secure their future. I'll be back for you by summer's end, he'd promised, his emerald eyes intense beneath the brim of his worn leather hat. With enough money to start our life together. That had been 3 months ago in the early spring of 1879. Now June's heat shimmered across Redding, and Lucy's hope was fading like morning dew under the California sun. She rose shakily to her feet and peered out at the moonlit landscape. The Blackburn Ranch sprawled across 200 acres of prime grazing land, the cattle barely visible as dark shapes against the silvered grass. Beyond lay the Sacramento River and the expanding town of Redding, where the railroad had brought prosperity and change. And somewhere far beyond was Ethan, perhaps unaware that her father had intercepted all his letters. Lucy touched her swollen lip and made her decision. She would not go to Sacramento, she would not bend to her father's will. You'll see, Papa, she whispered to the empty room. Ethan Lawson is worth waiting for. But as she crawled into bed, Lucy couldn't silence the small voice of doubt. What if Ethan never returned? What if the promises whispered under Redding's starry skies had been nothing but dreams carried away on the western wind? Dawn broke harsh and bright over the Blackburn Ranch. Lucy moved mechanically through her morning chores, avoiding her father's stern gaze across the breakfast table. Her stepmother, Martha, a thin woman with perpetually worried eyes, kept her head down, serving hot cakes and coffee in tense silence. The stage for Sacramento leaves tomorrow at noon, Liam announced, folding his newspaper. I expect you to be on it, Lucy. Lucy stared at her untouched plate. Yes, Papa, her father's expression softened slightly. This is for your own good, girl. You'll thank me someday when you're married to a man of substance, instead of burying some gunslinger before you're 20. Ethan's not a gunslinger, Lucy murmured, but Liam was already striding out the door, his spurs jangling against the wooden floor. Martha sighed, clearing the dishes. Your father loves you, Lucy, in his own way. His way hurts, Lucy replied, touching her bruised cheek. Martha's lips tightened. Men like your father only know one way to show concern. My own daddy was the same. She hesitated, then added softly, is this Ethan worth all this trouble? Lucy looked up, sudden fire in her blue eyes. He's everything, Martha. He sees me not as Liam Blackburn's daughter or a piece of property to be traded for business connections. When I'm with him, I'm just Lucy. Martha turned away, but not before Lucy caught the wistful expression on her stepmother's face. Then I hope he's as good a man as you believe. Now help me with these dishes before your father returns." Throughout the day, Lucy moved through her tasks like a sleepwalker, her mind racing with half-formed plans. She could run away tonight, try to make it to Sacramento on her own, find work, and wait for Ethan. But without money or connections, how long before she ended up in circumstances worse than her father's heavy hand? By evening, no solution had presented itself. Lucy sat on her bed, folding clothes for the journey she had no intention of making, when she heard the sound of approaching hooves. Visitors were rare at the isolated Blackburn ranch, especially after dark. Curious, she moved to her window and peered out into the gathering dusk. A lone rider approached, his silhouette backlit by the setting sun. Something about his easy posture in the saddle made Lucy's heart skip. She pressed her palms against the glass, scarcely daring to breathe. The rider came closer, and moonlight caught the gleam of copper hair beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice catching. Without thinking, she fled her room and raced down the stairs, her skirts gathered in her fists. Liam intercepted her at the front door, his massive form blocking her path. "Get back upstairs, Lucy." "But Papa, now," he thundered, then turned to Martha. "Get my shotgun." Terror seized Lucy's heart. "No, Papa, please don't hurt him." Liam's face darkened. "I warned that boy to stay away from my daughter. He's trespassing on my land." Outside, hooves crunched on gravel as the rider dismounted. A firm knock sounded on the door. "Martha, take Lucy upstairs and keep her there," Liam ordered, checking his shotgun with practiced hands. "Please," Lucy begged, clutching at her stepmother's arm. "He'll kill him." Martha hesitated, torn between loyalty to her husband and the desperate plea in her stepdaughter's eyes. "Liam, perhaps you should hear the young man out. I've heard enough from him," Liam growled, moving toward the door. One warning was Christian charity, two would be foolishness. The knocking came again, more insistent. Lucy broke free from Martha and rushed forward, placing herself between her father and the door. "Move, girl," Liam warned, his voice dangerously quiet. "I won't let you hurt him," Lucy replied, her chin raised despite her trembling limbs. The door opened behind her, and Lucy turned to find herself looking into Ethan Lawson's sun-bronzed face. At 23, he stood tall and lean in his trail-worn clothes, a pistol holstered at his hip and determination in his green eyes. Those eyes widened at the sight of Lucy's bruised face. "Who did that to you?" he demanded, reaching for her. Liam raised the shotgun. "That's far enough, Lawson." Ethan's hand froze mid-air, his gaze never leaving Lucy's face. "Did he do this to you?" Lucy nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, you shouldn't have come. He'll kill you." "I had to come," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the shotgun trained on his chest. "I made a promise." Liam's laugh was harsh. "Promises from men like you aren't worth the air they're spoken on. Now get off my property before I put a hole through you." "I'm not leaving without Lucy," Ethan said quietly, finally looking at the older man. "Not this time." "You think I'd let my daughter run off with a saddled tramp?" Liam's finger tightened on the trigger. "A man with no name, no land, no future." Ethan reached slowly into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded document. "That's why I've come, Mr. Blackburn, to show you I'm more than that now." Curiosity momentarily overcame Liam's anger. He lowered the shotgun slightly. "What's that?" "Deed to 80 acres south of here." "Good water rights, and this," Ethan produced another paper, "is confirmation of my position as foreman at the Pearson cattle operation." Liam's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Pearson? Clayton Pearson?" "Yes, sir. Started as a ranch hand, worked my way up." "Mr. Pearson was impressed enough to stake me to some land of my own." Ethan's gaze returned to Lucy, softening. "I told you I'd come back when I had something to offer." Lucy's heart soared at the proud determination in his voice. He had kept his word against all odds. Liam snorted, unimpressed. 80 acres is a backyard garden, and working for Clayton Pearson, the man's a cheat and a drunkard. He's a fair employer who gave me a chance," Ethan countered evenly. "And 80 acres is enough to start building something that will grow." "I'm asking for Lucy's hand properly, Mr. Blackburn. I love her and I can provide for her now." "The answer is still no," Liam said flatly. "Lucy's blood is too good for the likes of you." Lucy stepped forward. My blood is my own, Papa, as is my heart. I'm 18 now. I can make my own choice. As long as you live under my roof, you'll obey my rules, Liam roared. Then I won't live under your roof anymore, Lucy replied, her voice gaining strength with each word. She turned to Ethan, hope blossoming in her chest. Did you mean it? Do you really have a place for us? Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. A small cabin on my land. It's not much yet, but it's everything, Lucy whispered, reaching for his hand. Liam moved with surprising speed for such a large man. The butt of his shotgun came down hard on Ethan's shoulder, driving the younger man to his knees with a grunt of pain. Papa, no, Lucy screamed, trying to shield Ethan with her body. Get away from him, girl. Liam grabbed Lucy's arm, yanking her back with enough force to make her cry out. Ethan's expression darkened at Lucy's pain. He rose smoothly to his feet, shrugging off the blow. Don't touch her like that again, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Liam raised the shotgun. Or what, boy, you'll draw that pistol? I'll have you hanged for murder before sunrise. There won't be any killing tonight, came Martha's firm voice from the stairway. She stood with Lucy's carpet bag in her hands. I've packed some things for you, Lucy. You should go now while you can. Liam's face purpled with rage. Have you lost your mind, woman? You're helping her run off with this nobody. Martha descended the stairs, her usually timid demeanor replaced with quiet dignity. I'm helping her escape a man who beats his own daughter for the crime of loving someone he doesn't approve of. She handed the bag to Lucy. There's a little money sewn into the lining, not much, but it might help. Lucy embraced her stepmother, tears flowing freely now. Thank you, she whispered. Come with us, he'll turn on you next. Martha shook her head. This is my place, go find yours, child. Nobody's going anywhere. Liam bellowed, raising the shotgun again. Ethan moved with the fluid grace of a man accustomed to danger. His hand flashed to his holster, drawing his revolver in one smooth motion. I don't want to hurt you, Mr. Blackburn, but I will if you force my hand. The two men faced each other, weapons raised, neither blinking. You can't watch her every minute of every day, Ethan said softly. And I won't stop coming for her. Why not end this now before someone gets hurt? Liam's eyes blazed with fury, but uncertainty crept into his expression. Despite his bluster, he recognized the steady hand and clear eyes of a man who wouldn't miss if he pulled the trigger. Take her then, he finally spat, lowering his shotgun. But don't come crying back when he leaves you with nothing but hungry babies and broken promises, he added to Lucy. Lucy flinched at her father's words but stood firm. Goodbye, Papa, I hope someday you'll understand. Liam turned away, his broad shoulders stiff with pride. You're no daughter of mine from this moment on. Go. Martha pressed a quick kiss to Lucy's cheek. Be happy, she whispered. And be careful. Minutes later, Lucy found herself mounted behind Ethan on his sturdy roan gelding, her arms wrapped around his waist as they galloped away from the only home she had ever known. The night wind dried the tears on her cheeks, and despite the pain of her father's rejection, exhilaration bubbled in her chest. Are you all right? Ethan called over his shoulder, his body warm and solid against hers. Lucy tightened her hold on him. I am now. They rode through the night, stopping only to rest the horse. When dawn painted the eastern sky with streaks of pink and gold, they crested a rise that offered a view of the valley below. Ethan reined in the horse and turned in the saddle to look at Lucy. There, he said, pointing to a distant patch of green nestled between rolling hills. That's our land. It's not much yet, but with work, Lucy silenced him with a kiss, her hands framing his face. It's perfect, she murmured against his lips. It's ours. Ethan smiled, the worry lines easing from his face. I was afraid you might change your mind when you saw how humble it is compared to your father's spread. Lucy shook her head. My father's wealth was built on cruelty and control. I'd rather have love in a one-room cabin than live another day under his roof. They descended into the valley as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the landscape. Lucy drank in every detail the stand of oak trees near a bubbling creek, the meadow dotted with wildflowers, and finally, the small cabin that would be their home. It was indeed humble. A single-room structure with a stone chimney and a small porch. but to Lucy's eyes it was a palace of freedom. Ethan helped her down from the horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "Welcome home, Lucy." Lucy turned slowly, taking in the vast open sky, the distant mountains, and the promise of the land around them. No father to dictate her every move, no belt to fear, just open space and the man she loved. "Home," she repeated, tasting the word. Then she laughed, a sound of pure joy, and threw her arms around Ethan's neck. "Show me everything." The cabin's interior was sparsely furnished but clean, with a bed frame Ethan had crafted himself, a small table with 2 chairs, and a cast-iron stove. A shelf held a few books, and dried herbs hung from the rafters. "The Pearsons gave me some essentials to start," Ethan explained, watching Lucy's face anxiously. Mrs. Pearson included some things she thought a woman might want. Lucy ran her fingers over a patchwork quilt on the bed. "It's wonderful, Ethan, truly." Relief washed over his features. "We'll make it better day by day. I promise you won't regret coming with me." Lucy crossed to him and placed her hand on his cheek. "The only thing I would regret is not being with you." Their life together began that day in the summer of 1879, far from the reaches of Liam Blackburn's influence. Lucy discovered talents she never knew she possessed: gardening, preserving food, even helping to birth a calf when Ethan brought home their first few head of cattle. By October, their little homestead had begun to take shape. Lucy had created a thriving vegetable garden, and Ethan had added a small barn and corral. The cabin now boasted curtains at the windows and a rag rug on the floor, small touches that made it feel more like a home. But as winter approached, so did new challenges. Ethan's duties at the Pearson Ranch kept him away for long hours, and sometimes overnight when bad weather threatened the herd. Lucy found herself alone more often than not, jumping at every sound in the wilderness that surrounded their isolated cabin. One evening in late November, as a cold rain pelted the roof and windows, Lucy sat by the fire darning Ethan's socks. The howl of the wind masked the approach of riders until a heavy knock at the door made her heart leap into her throat. "Ethan," she called, setting aside her mending and moving cautiously toward the door. "It's me," came his familiar voice, but something in his tone made Lucy hesitate before lifting the latch. Ethan stood on the porch, rain dripping from his hat and slicker. Behind him, another rider remained mounted, face obscured by a rain-soaked hat. "What's wrong?" Lucy asked, immediately sensing trouble in Ethan's tight expression. "Clayton Pearson's been shot," Ethan said grimly, stepping inside and removing his hat. "Rustlers hit the north pasture. I need to ride out with the men to track them, but I didn't want to leave you alone." He gestured to the mounted figure. "This is Daniel, Clayton's younger brother. He'll stay here until I get back." The rider dismounted and approached the porch, removing his hat to reveal a face startlingly similar to Ethan's in its angular handsomeness, though his hair was darker and his eyes a deep brown. "Madam," Daniel nodded respectfully. "Sorry to impose." Lucy's stomach knotted with foreboding. "How long will you be gone?" she asked Ethan. 2 days, maybe 3. Ethan's eyes held a silent apology. "I wouldn't go if it wasn't necessary, but I owe Clayton, and if we don't stop these rustlers now, our stock could be next." Lucy swallowed her fear and nodded. "I understand, be careful." Ethan pulled her into a fierce embrace, heedless of his wet clothing. "I'll come back to you," he whispered against her hair. "Always." After Ethan rode away into the stormy night, Lucy showed Daniel where he could sleep on a pallet near the fire. The young man was polite but quiet, answering her questions about the rustlers with minimal details. "Best not to worry yourself, Mrs. Lawson," he said, accepting the bowl of stew she offered. "Ethan and the boys will handle it." Lucy sat across from him, studying his downcast face. "How badly is Mr. Pearson hurt?" Daniel's expression darkened. "Took a bullet to the shoulder. Doc says he'll live, but—" He trailed off, then looked up sharply. "You should know, madam, these aren't ordinary rustlers. They're Blackburn men." Lucy's spoon clattered against her bowl. "What?" "My father's men," Daniel nodded grimly. "Clayton and your father have been feuding for years over water rights. Looks like Liam's escalating things." Cold dread seeped into Lucy's bones. If her father's men were involved, Ethan would be riding into danger far greater than he realized. Liam Blackburn never forgave those who crossed him, and Ethan had committed the ultimate offense by taking his daughter. "I need to warn him," Lucy said, standing abruptly. Daniel caught her arm. "You can't ride out in this storm, madam, and they've got too much of a head start now. Ethan's smart." "He'll be careful." Lucy pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself as she moved to the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could see nothing but darkness. "You don't know my father. He's a dangerous man when he's crossed." "So I've heard," Daniel replied quietly. "All the more reason for you to stay put where it's safe." But as Lucy lay awake that night, listening to Daniel's soft snores from his pallet by the dying fire, she couldn't shake the feeling that nowhere would be safe if her father had decided to extract his revenge. The next day dawned clear and cold, the storm having blown itself out overnight. Lucy went about her chores mechanically, her mind constantly straying to Ethan and the danger he might be facing. Daniel proved himself useful, chopping wood and mending a broken hinge on the barn door. "You've made a nice home here," he commented as they ate a simple lunch of bread and cheese. "Ethan's a lucky man," Lucy smiled faintly. "We both are. This land may not be much compared to my father's ranch, but it's ours. We're building something together." Daniel's expression grew serious. "You really love him, don't you? Enough to give up everything?" "I didn't give up anything that mattered," Lucy replied firmly. "What good is wealth if it comes with a cage?" The afternoon passed slowly, each hour stretching Lucy's nerves tighter. When the sun began to set with no sign of Ethan or the other men returning, she found herself pacing the small cabin, unable to settle to any task. "They probably had to track the rustlers further than expected," Daniel offered, watching her from his seat by the fire. "Ethan knows these hills." "He'll be fine." Lucy nodded absently, but something in Daniel's too casual tone made her glance at him sharply. "You seem very certain." Daniel shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Just trying to keep your spirits up, madam." Night fell, bringing with it a bone-deep cold that even the crackling fire couldn't dispel. Lucy prepared a simple supper, but found she had no appetite. Daniel ate heartily, however, seeming to relax as the evening wore on. "Tell me about yourself, Daniel," Lucy said suddenly, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "Ethan's mentioned Clayton, but never a brother." Daniel stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Not much to tell. I've been away, just got back to these parts recently." "Away where?" "Texas, mostly." Daniel's hand moved to his side, an unconscious gesture that drew Lucy's attention to the revolver holstered at his hip. A revolver he hadn't been wearing the night before, she realized with a jolt. Suspicion bloomed in Lucy's mind. Why would he arm himself now when the danger was supposedly elsewhere? And why had he volunteered to stay behind instead of joining the pursuit of the rustlers? "I think I'll turn in early," Lucy said, forcing a yawn. "You'll keep the fire going." Daniel nodded, his dark eyes watching her too intently. "Sleep well, Mrs. Lawson." Lucy retreated to the bedroom area partitioned by a curtain, but instead of preparing for bed, she silently retrieved Ethan's spare pistol from the trunk where he kept it. Heart pounding, she checked that it was loaded, remembering Ethan's patient instruction on its use. "Pray you never need it," he had told her, "but if you do, don't hesitate." Lucy slipped the pistol into the pocket of her skirt and lay down fully clothed on top of the bed, pulling the quilt over herself to give the appearance of sleep. Through a small gap in the curtain, she watched Daniel move around the cabin, his actions becoming less guarded as he apparently believed her asleep. He opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. Lucy heard the low murmur of voices, then Daniel returned, accompanied by two rough-looking men she had never seen before. "She asleep?" one of them asked, his voice a harsh whisper. Daniel nodded, out like a light, "Doesn't suspect a thing." "The boss wants this done clean," said the second man, removing his hat to reveal a shock of gray-streaked hair. "No harm to the girl, just burn the place and bring her back." "What about Lawson?" Daniel asked. The first man grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Bailey and the others are leading him and the Pearson crew on a wild goose chase. By the time they figure it out, we'll be long gone, and there'll be nothing left here but ashes." Lucy's blood ran cold. These were her father's men, sent to destroy everything she and Ethan had built and drag her back to the prison of her father's house. And Daniel was working with them, had been lying to her from the beginning. With trembling hands, Lucy gripped the pistol. She had to get away to warn Ethan somehow, but 3 armed men stood between her and the door. The gray-haired man was spreading something around the base of the wall's coal oil, Lucy realized with horror. They really meant to burn her home to the ground. Better wake the girl, he said to Daniel. Get her out before we light it up. Daniel moved toward the curtains separating Lucy's sleeping area. She quickly closed her eyes, feigning sleep, the pistol hidden beneath the quilt. Mrs. Lawson, Daniel called softly, pulling back the curtain. Wake up now. Lucy stirred as if just roused from deep sleep. Daniel, what's wrong? You need to come with me, he said, his voice no longer holding any pretense of friendliness. Now, Lucy sat up, blinking as if confused. Where's Ethan? Has he returned? Ethan's not coming back, Daniel said flatly. Get up, your father wants to see you. Lucy's confusion didn't have to be feigned now. My father, what are you talking about? Daniel grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet. Stop playing dumb. Liam Blackburn paid good money to get you back, and that's exactly what we're doing. Lucy allowed herself to be pulled toward the main room where the other 2 men waited. The smell of coal oil was strong now, and one of the men held a lit lantern. Let's go, girl, the gray-haired man said, unless you want to burn with this place. Lucy looked around at the small cabin she had come to love, at the life she and Ethan had begun to build together. Rage replaced her fear, a cold, clear anger that steadied her hand as it slipped into her pocket. I'm not going anywhere with you, she said quietly. The men laughed. You don't have a choice, Daniel sneered, tightening his grip on her arm. In one fluid motion, Lucy drew the pistol and pressed it against Daniel's ribs. I always have a choice. The laughter died on the men's faces. You don't want to do that, girl, the gray-haired man warned, his hand moving toward his own weapon. Stay still, Lucy commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm leaving here and none of you are going to stop me. You won't shoot, Daniel scoffed, but uncertainty had crept into his expression. Lucy cocked the hammer. My father taught me one useful thing, how to handle a firearm. Now back away. To her surprise, they obeyed, creating a path to the door. Lucy moved sideways, keeping the gun trained on Daniel, whom she perceived as the greatest threat. Tell my father, she said, her voice cold with suppressed fury, that if he sends men after me again, I won't be so merciful. She backed onto the porch, then froze. In the moonlight, she could see 4 more riders approaching from the tree line. Her momentary advantage was lost. Then a shot rang out from the darkness beyond the approaching riders, and one of them toppled from his saddle. More gunfire erupted, and Lucy dove for cover behind a rain barrel as bullets splintered the wood of the cabin around her. Lucy, Ethan's voice called from the darkness. Run for the trees. Relief flooded through her at the sound of his voice. Ethan was alive, and he had somehow known to return. Taking advantage of the confusion, Lucy sprinted toward the tree line, keeping low. Bullets kicked up dirt around her feet, but then answering fire from the trees covered her escape. She crashed through the underbrush until strong arms caught her. I've got you, Ethan said, pulling her behind the trunk of a massive oak. His face was streaked with dirt and what looked like blood, but his eyes were clear and focused as they swept over her. Are you hurt? Lucy shook her head, clinging to him. How did you know? One of Pearson's men recognized Daniel from a wanted poster. He's no relation to Clayton, he's a hired gun who works for your father. Ethan's jaw tightened. I rode back as fast as I could, gathered some of Clayton's most trusted men on the way. A massive explosion rocked the night as the cabin erupted in flames, the coal oil creating an inferno that lit up the clearing like day. No, Lucy cried, watching as the home they had created together was consumed by fire. Ethan held her tightly. It's just a building, he murmured against her hair. We can rebuild. All that matters is that you're safe. The gunfight continued around the burning cabin, but Ethan's men had the advantage of cover and surprise. One by one, Liam's hired guns fell or surrendered. Daniel was among the last, emerging from behind the barn with his hands raised. When the shooting finally stopped, Ethan led Lucy back to the clearing where Clayton Pearson's men had rounded up the surviving attackers. The cabin was nothing but a smoldering ruin, collapsing in on itself as the flames consumed the last of the structure. Daniel glared defiantly at Lucy as she approached. "Your father won't stop," he spat. "You'll never be free of him." Lucy met his gaze without flinching. "Tell him this ends now. If he comes after us again, I'll ride to Sacramento myself and tell the territorial governor how Liam Blackburn conducts his business. I wonder how many of his cattle operations would survive that kind of scrutiny." Daniel's expression faltered, and Lucy knew her threat had struck home. Her father's wealth hadn't all been accumulated through legal means, and he had powerful enemies who would seize any opportunity to bring him down. "The sheriff will be mighty interested in these gentlemen," said Clayton Pearson, who had ridden up despite his bandaged shoulder. Attempted murder, arson, rustling should keep them occupied for quite some time. As Pearson's men led the prisoners away, Lucy surveyed the ruins of her home, tears finally spilling onto her cheeks. Everything they had built, every small treasure and necessity, gone in minutes. Ethan's arm circled her shoulders. "We'll start over," he promised. "Somewhere else if necessary. Somewhere your father can't reach us." Lucy leaned into his strength. "Where would we go? North, maybe, Oregon or Washington Territory, or east to Colorado." Ethan turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "It doesn't matter where, Lucy, as long as we're together." The sincerity in his voice warmed something inside her that the fire's destruction had chilled. "Together," she agreed, rising on tiptoe to kiss him, tasting smoke and sweat and the promise of tomorrow. Clayton Pearson insisted they stay at his ranch while they decided their next move. The Pearson home was a sprawling affair, far more luxurious than their little cabin had been, and Mrs. Pearson fussed over Lucy like a mother hen. "Such a terrible ordeal," the older woman clucked, providing Lucy with a fresh dress and a hot bath. "And to think that monster who raised you would go to such lengths. You're safe here, dear. Clayton has doubled the guards." But as days passed, Lucy grew restless. The comfort of the Pearson home felt like another kind of cage, especially with armed men constantly patrolling the perimeter. Ethan was often absent, meeting with Clayton and his foremen to discuss security arrangements, or riding into town to speak with the sheriff about the captured men. A week after the attack, Lucy was sitting on the Pearsons' wide veranda, watching the sunset paint the hills with gold when Ethan joined her. His expression was troubled but determined. "The sheriff released Daniel this morning," he said without preamble. Not enough evidence to hold him, apparently. Lucy wasn't surprised. Her father's influence extended to the local law enforcement, and the others still in custody for now. Ethan sat beside her, taking her hand. "Lucy, I've been thinking we can't stay here. Your father knows where we are, and next time he might send more men or come himself." Lucy nodded, having reached the same conclusion days ago. "Where will we go?" "I've been talking with a land agent in town. There's a parcel available in northern Oregon, near the Columbia River. Good water, timber, grazing land, far enough away that your father's reach won't extend there." "Oregon," Lucy repeated, testing the word. It sounded impossibly distant, a place she'd only heard about in travelers' tales. "What about your position with Mr. Pearson, the land you bought here?" Ethan's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Clayton's offered to buy my acres at a fair price, plus a bonus for my troubles, as he put it. I think he feels responsible for what happened, though none of it was his fault." "When would we leave?" "Tomorrow, if you're willing." Ethan's eyes searched her face anxiously. "I know it's asking a lot, Lucy, moving again, starting over in an unfamiliar place, but I promise I'll make it worth the journey." Lucy thought of the home they had lost, the fear that had shadowed them even in their happiest moments here. Perhaps a fresh start, far from her father's influence, was exactly what they needed. "I'll follow you anywhere, Ethan Lawson," she said softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Even to Oregon." They departed at dawn the next morning, traveling light but better equipped than they had been after fleeing the Blackburn ranch. Clayton Pearson had insisted on providing them with a sturdy wagon. 2 good horses in addition to Ethan's roan, supplies for the journey, and a sum of money that made Lucy's eyes widen when Ethan showed her. "Consider it payment for loyal service," Clayton had said gruffly, pressing the purse into Ethan's hands, "and for nearly getting you both killed." The journey north was long and often difficult. They joined a small wagon train for safety through the most dangerous territories, sharing campfires and hardships with other families seeking new beginnings. Lucy found an unexpected freedom in the traveling life, no roof to constrain her but the vast sky, no boundaries but the distant horizon. By day, she rode beside Ethan or drove the wagon while he scouted ahead. By night, they slept beneath the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, their love deepening with each mile that carried them further from the shadows of the past. It was late September when they reached their destination, a valley nestled between rolling hills near the mighty Columbia River. Autumn had painted the landscape in russet and gold, and a crisp breeze carried the scent of pine and distant snow. "This is it," Ethan said, reining in his horse atop a ridge that overlooked the valley. "What do you think?" Lucy surveyed the land that would become their new home, the meandering creek that cut through meadows perfect for grazing, the stands of timber that would provide lumber for building, the sheltered hollow where they could raise a house protected from winter winds. "It's beautiful," she breathed, overwhelmed by the raw potential spread before them. "It feels untouched, like we're the first to see it." Ethan smiled, the worry lines that had marked his face throughout their journey finally easing. "Not quite. There's a small settlement about 10 miles west and a trading post on the river. But it's ours, Lucy. 160 acres and not a Blackburn in sight." They made camp in the hollow that night, planning by firelight where they would build their cabin before winter set in. With the money from Clayton Pearson, they could afford to hire help from the settlement, speeding the process. "We'll need a bigger house eventually," Ethan said, sketching plans in the dirt with a stick. 3 bedrooms at least." Lucy raised an eyebrow. 3. "Planning for a large family, Mr. Lawson." Ethan's ears reddened in the firelight. "Well, I thought, that is, if you wanted." Lucy laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed across their land. 3 sounds perfect, maybe even 4. The work began the next day. Ethan hired 4 men from the settlement to help clear land and fell trees for the cabin. Lucy established a temporary camp that would serve as their home until the structure was complete, creating surprising comfort with their limited possessions. October brought the first frosts, gilding the meadow grass each morning and adding urgency to their building efforts. The cabin took shape larger and more substantial than their first home had been, with proper windows Ethan had purchased from a merchant in the settlement. By November, the structure was enclosed enough to move in, though much interior work remained. Their first night in their new home, Lucy stood in the doorway watching snow begin to fall, soft white flakes drifting from a pewter sky. "Are you happy?" Ethan asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Lucy leaned back against his chest, savoring his warmth. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Winter settled over their valley, wrapping them in a cocoon of snow and solitude. They worked together to complete the cabin's interior hanging doors, building furniture, creating the home they had dreamed of during those long miles of travel. In the evenings, they sat before the fire, Ethan teaching Lucy to read from the few books they possessed, Lucy teaching Ethan to dance to the music she hummed. They shared stories of their childhoods, dreams for their future, and plans for the land when spring returned. It was during one of these quiet evenings in late January that Lucy placed Ethan's hand on her still flat stomach, her eyes shining in the firelight. "We might need that 3rd bedroom sooner than we thought," she said softly. Ethan's expression transformed from confusion to wonder. We're," Lucy nodded, her heart so full it felt it might burst. "Come summer, there will be 3 of us." The joy that blazed across Ethan's face was brighter than any sunrise Lucy had ever witnessed. He gathered her gently in his arms as if she had suddenly become fragile as spun glass and pressed his lips to her forehead, her eyelids, her mouth. "A family," he whispered against her skin. "Our family." Spring came late to the valley, but when it arrived, it brought an explosion of wildflowers and new growth. Lucy's body blossomed with their child, and Ethan hovered protectively, insisting she rest while he took on the heaviest tasks of preparing fields and building corrals for the livestock they would soon acquire. Their nearest neighbors, the Hendersons, lived 5 miles away but became regular visitors, offering advice on farming the local soil and bringing gifts for the coming baby. Martha Henderson, a motherly woman with grown children of her own, promised to attend Lucy when her time came. "First babies often take their time," she assured Lucy during an afternoon visit in late May. "But don't you worry, I've helped bring more than 30 little ones into this world, including all 6 of my own." Lucy was grateful for the older woman's kindness, especially as her confinement approached, and her thoughts sometimes turned to her own mother, who had died when Lucy was only 10. What would she think of her daughter now, building a life so far from everything familiar? "She would be proud," Ethan said when Lucy voiced these thoughts one evening. "Proud of your courage and your strength." As June ripened toward July, the baby's movements became stronger, keeping Lucy awake through the warm nights. She would often sit on the porch during these sleepless hours, watching fireflies dance over the meadow and feeling the new life stirring within her. It was during one such night that she saw the riders, 3 men on horseback, moving slowly along the road that wound through the valley. In the bright moonlight, Lucy could see they were heavily armed. Fear clutched at her heart. Had her father found them even here? She moved quickly back into the cabin, shaking Ethan awake. "Riders coming," she whispered urgently. 3 of them. Ethan was instantly alert, reaching for his rifle. "Stay inside," he ordered, moving to the window that overlooked the approach to the cabin. Lucy pressed her hands protectively over her swollen belly. After months of peace, the thought that danger might have followed them was almost unbearable. The riders stopped at the edge of the cleared land surrounding the cabin. One of them called out, "Hello, the house." Ethan positioned himself at the partially open door, rifle ready. "State your business," he called back. "Looking for lodging for the night," came the reply. "We're headed to Portland, lost our way in the dark." Lucy moved to Ethan's side, peering past him at the strangers. "They don't look like my father's men," she whispered. The riders were trail-worn, their clothes dusty from travel, without the hard-eyed look of hired guns. Ethan hesitated, then lowered his rifle slightly. "You can camp by the creek," he called. "There's good water there, but keep your distance from the house." The men conferred briefly, then the spokesman nodded. "Much obliged, we'll be gone at first light." Ethan watched them ride toward the creek, his posture still tense. "I'll keep watch tonight," he told Lucy, "just to be safe." But the travelers caused no trouble, and true to their word, they were gone when dawn broke. Still, the incident had shaken Lucy, reminding her that their peace might always be fragile, their safety never entirely assured. July arrived with scorching heat that turned the meadow grass golden and made Lucy feel as though she were baking from within. Her time was near, and she moved heavily around the cabin, preparing for the baby's arrival with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Ethan had ridden to the settlement for final supplies, promising to bring Martha Henderson back with him. Lucy stood at the door watching his departing figure until he disappeared into the trees, then turned to continue her preparations. The pains began shortly after midday, mild at first, easily mistaken for the practice contractions she'd been experiencing for weeks. But by mid-afternoon, there was no mistaking their purpose. Lucy paced the cabin, breathing through each wave as Martha had instructed her, trying not to watch the sun's slow descent toward the western hills. Ethan should have returned by now. As twilight deepened into dusk, Lucy's waters broke in a warm rush, soaking the floor beneath her. The contractions intensified, driving her to her knees with their force. "Not yet," she gasped, addressing her unborn child. "Wait for your father, wait for help." But the baby had its own schedule, indifferent to Lucy's pleas. Outside, a summer storm was gathering, thunder rolling across the valley as if in sympathy with her labor. Lucy dragged herself to the bed, gathering clean linens and the knife she had boiled earlier as a precaution. Martha had explained what would be needed, but the prospect of facing this alone filled Lucy with cold terror. The hours blurred into a haze of pain and effort. Rain lashed against the cabin walls, and wind howled through the trees, masking any sound of approaching riders. Lucy lost herself in the ancient rhythm of birth, her body knowing what her mind could not comprehend. And then, with a final tremendous effort, her child slipped into the world and gave its first lusty cry just as lightning split the sky outside. Lucy gathered her son into her arms, weeping with relief and joy as she counted his perfect fingers and toes. He had a thatch of copper hair like his father's and eyes of newborn blue that blinked up at her in the lamplight. "Hello, little one," she whispered, cradling him against her breast. "You couldn't wait, could you?" She had just finished the necessary tasks of cutting the cord and delivering the afterbirth when the cabin door burst open. Ethan stood framed in the doorway, drenched from the storm, his face a mask of panic that dissolved into wonder at the sight before him. "Lucy," he breathed, crossing the room in 2 strides and falling to his knees beside the bed. "The bridge was washed out, I couldn't get back," his voice broke as he reached out a trembling hand to touch his son's downy head. "You did this alone," Lucy smiled tiredly. "Not alone, he helped." She shifted the bundle in her arms. "Meet your son, Ethan." Tears mingled with rainwater on Ethan's face as he gently took the baby, cradling him with infinite care. "He's perfect," he whispered, "like his mother." Martha Henderson arrived the next morning, clucking with disapproval at having missed the birth but full of praise for Lucy's handling of the situation. "Strong stock, both of you," she declared, examining mother and child. "What will you call him?" Lucy and Ethan exchanged a glance. They had discussed names during the long winter evenings, but now, looking at their son's determined little face, Lucy knew. "William," she said softly. "William Clayton Lawson." Ethan's eyebrows rose at her choice. William had been her father's name. "Are you sure?" Lucy nodded. "The past is part of him, whether we wish it or not, but he'll make the name mean something different, something better." As summer mellowed into autumn, little William thrived. He was a good-natured baby with his father's quick smile and his mother's curious eyes. Lucy recovered quickly from the birth, resuming her duties around the homestead with William snuggled against her in a sling Martha had shown her how to fashion. Ethan expanded their holdings, purchasing a small herd of cattle and 2 more horses. He built a larger barn and hired a local boy to help with the heaviest work, allowing him to spend more time with his family. Their first Christmas in Oregon was a quiet celebration, but infinitely precious. They decorated a small pine tree with paper ornaments Lucy had crafted, and Ethan presented her with a silver locket to replace the one she had lost in the fire, this one containing a tiny likeness of William that he had somehow arranged to have made during a trip to Portland. "It's beautiful," Lucy whispered, touching the delicate engraving. "How did you afford this?" Ethan smiled mysteriously. "I've been saving, and there might be a few more surprises yet." Those surprises were revealed the next morning, a rocking chair for the porch, where Lucy loved to sit with William, and most unexpected of all, a letter. "It's from Martha," Ethan explained, handing her the sealed envelope. "Your stepmother, not our neighbor. It came to the trading post last week." Lucy stared at the letter in shock. She hadn't communicated with her stepmother since fleeing the Blackburn ranch 18 months earlier, had assumed that bridge was burned along with so many others. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet of paper. "Dear Lucy, I pray this finds you well and happy in your new life. Your father does not know I write to you, and it is best it remains so. I wanted you to know that Daniel and the men who attacked your home have been dealt with, not by the law which failed you, but by a higher justice. Their wagon went off the pass during a storm last winter. No survivors were found. Your father's health has declined since you left. The doctor calls it heart trouble, but I believe it is the absence of his daughter and the knowledge of the evil he committed against her. He speaks your name in his sleep sometimes. I do not ask you to forgive him. Some actions lie beyond forgiveness. But I thought you should know that he suffers and that perhaps, in his way, he loved you. Be happy, dear girl, live the life that was denied to me. With affection, Martha Lucy folded the letter carefully and sat for a long time, watching William sleep in his cradle while Ethan respectfully kept his distance, allowing her to process this unexpected connection to her past. "Are you all right?" he finally asked, kneeling beside her chair. Lucy nodded slowly. "I think so. It's strange I've spent so long being afraid of my father, hating him for what he did to us. Now I find I mostly feel nothing. He's part of another life that doesn't touch us anymore." Ethan took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Do you ever regret it, leaving everything behind?" Lucy looked around their snug cabin, at the sleeping baby who embodied their love, at the man who had risked everything to build this life with her. "Never," she said firmly, "not for a single moment." Spring brought new growth to their valley and new challenges to their life. William was crawling now, exploring his world with fearless curiosity that kept Lucy constantly vigilant. Ethan expanded their fields, planting wheat alongside the vegetables in Lucy's thriving garden. Their second summer in Oregon saw the arrival of more settlers to the valley, families drawn by stories of fertile land and opportunity. Lucy, who had once feared strangers, now welcomed the newcomers, hosting gatherings where women exchanged recipes and advice while men discussed crops and weather. "You've become quite the social butterfly," Ethan teased after one such gathering, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies rise from the meadow grass. William was asleep inside, exhausted from toddling after the older children. Lucy smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "It's nice not to be afraid anymore, to welcome people instead of dreading what they might bring." Ethan's arm tightened around her. "You deserve that peace, we both do." As their third year in Oregon unfolded, prosperity followed their hard work. The cattle herd doubled, and Ethan's wheat crop brought a handsome price at market. They added 2 rooms to the cabin and purchased a piano, a luxury Lucy had never expected to own again after leaving her father's house. William grew into a sturdy little boy with his father's adventurous spirit and his mother's quick mind. By his 3rd birthday, he was riding his own pony and helping with simple chores around the farm. It was around this time that Lucy discovered she was expecting their second child. The news filled Ethan with a joy even greater than he had shown the first time, if such a thing were possible. "Another perfect being you're creating," he marveled, his hand gentle on her still flat abdomen. "How did I get so blessed?" The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter months. Unlike her confinement with William, Lucy remained active and strong, her body knowing the path it must travel. Martha Henderson still visited regularly, pronouncing both mother and unborn child healthy. Spring was just beginning to touch the valley with green when the letter arrived. Unlike the previous communication from her stepmother, this envelope bore the official seal of a Sacramento law firm. Lucy's hands trembled as she opened it, Ethan hovering protectively at her side. To Mrs. Lucy Lawson, née Blackburn. "We regret to inform you of the passing of your father, Liam Blackburn, on February 12, 1883. As per the terms of his last will and testament, you are named as his sole heir, the estate consisting of ranch lands totaling approximately 2,000 acres, a herd of 1,200 head of cattle, the main residence and outbuildings, and liquid assets amounting to $75,000. Your presence is requested at your earliest convenience to settle these matters. Respectfully, James Whittaker, Esq." Lucy read the letter twice, then passed it wordlessly to Ethan. He scanned the contents, his expression darkening. "We don't have to go," he said immediately. "You don't owe him anything." Lucy moved to the window, gazing out at the land they had transformed with their own hands, their home, their future. "I know," she said softly. Ethan joined her, his hand coming to rest protectively on her growing belly. "What are you thinking?" Lucy turned to face him, her decision already made. "I want to go, not for him but for me, to close that chapter properly." The journey to California was arduous for a woman 6 months with child, but Lucy insisted she was strong enough. They left William in the capable hands of Martha Henderson and her husband, promising to return within a month. Redding had changed little in the 4 years since Lucy had fled. The railroad had brought more commerce, and new buildings lined the main street, but the essential character of the frontier town remained unchanged. As the stagecoach rolled past familiar landmarks, Lucy felt a curious detachment, as if she were visiting a place she had only heard described rather than lived in for 18 years. The Blackburn ranch, however, hit her with unexpected force. As they approached the sprawling main house, memories flooded back, some pleasant from her early childhood, others dark with her father's rage and violence. Martha greeted them on the porch, older and grayer than Lucy remembered, but her eyes still kind. She embraced Lucy with genuine warmth. "You look well," she said, stepping back to assess Lucy's pregnant form. "Happiness agrees with you." "This is my husband, Ethan," Lucy said, drawing him forward. Martha's eyes showed no surprise as she shook Ethan's hand. "The man who stole Liam's daughter," she said with the ghost of a smile. "He spoke of you often, though never kindly." "I can imagine," Ethan replied dryly. Martha led them into the house, where everything was exactly as Lucy remembered: the heavy oak furniture, the hunting trophies on the walls, the Persian carpet in the parlor imported at great expense. "Nothing changes here," Lucy murmured, running her fingers over the piano where she had practiced for countless hours under her father's critical eye. "He wouldn't allow it," Martha confirmed. "After you left, he insisted everything remain as it was, as if expecting you to return any day." Lucy moved to the window that overlooked the corrals. "How did he die?" "His heart gave out," Martha said simply. "He was checking the south pasture when it happened. One of the hands found him the next morning." "Was he alone?" Lucy asked, surprising herself with the question. Martha nodded. "Yes, he died as he lived solitary and unyielding." The following days were consumed with legal matters. The lawyer, Whitaker, was efficient but clearly uncomfortable dealing with a woman in business matters, repeatedly addressing his comments to Ethan despite Lucy's obvious intelligence and decisiveness. "The estate is considerable," he explained, spreading documents across his desk. "You'll need to decide whether to sell or maintain the operations. I should mention that several interested parties have already made inquiries." Lucy exchanged a glance with Ethan. They had discussed this during the journey from Oregon. "I have no interest in returning here permanently," Lucy said firmly, "but I won't sell to just anyone. This land has been in my family for 2 generations." Over the next week, Lucy met with potential buyers, asking pointed questions about their intentions for the land and treatment of the workers. Most were taken aback by her businesslike approach, clearly having expected a grieving daughter eager to be rid of her inheritance. "You don't need to make a decision immediately," Ethan reminded her as they prepared for bed in Lucy's childhood room, a space that felt both familiar and utterly alien to her now. "We can return to Oregon and consider offers by mail." Lucy sat at the vanity, brushing her hair with long strokes. "I want to settle this before we leave," she said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "I don't want ties to this place hanging over us." Ethan moved behind her, taking the brush from her hands to continue the soothing rhythm. "Whatever you decide, I'll support. It's your inheritance." "Ours," Lucy corrected. "Everything I am, everything I have is shared with you." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Clayton Pearson arrived unannounced, his once dark hair now heavily streaked with silver, but his bearing still proud. "I heard you were back," he said, removing his hat as he entered the parlor where Lucy received him. "And about Liam's passing. My condolences, though I know your relationship was complicated." Lucy hadn't seen Clayton since leaving California, though occasional letters had kept them informed of each other's circumstances. "It's good to see you, Mr. Pearson. You're looking well." Clayton's gaze moved to Ethan, who had entered from the study. "Lawson. Still keeping this girl safe, I see." Ethan shook the older man's hand warmly. "Trying my best, sir." They spoke of mutual acquaintances and changes in the region before Clayton finally came to the purpose of his visit. "I understand you're considering offers for the ranch," he said, accepting the coffee Martha brought. "I'd like to make one myself." Lucy's eyebrows rose. "You're interested in the Blackburn land, after all the trouble between you and my father." Clayton set down his cup. It's good land, despite who owned it, and combined with my holdings, it would create the largest operation in the county. He named a figure that exceeded any other offer they had received. Lucy studied the man who had once been her father's bitter enemy, yet had shown nothing but kindness to her and Ethan. "Why should I sell to you instead of the others?" Clayton smiled approvingly at her direct approach. "Because I won't parcel it out to developers or turn off the workers who have spent their lives here. This land deserves to be worked as it was meant to be as ranchland." Lucy considered his words. "I would have conditions. Name them. The hands stay on with fair wages." The Blackburn name remains on the original homestead portion, and 5% of the annual profits go to establish a school in Reading. Clayton's eyebrows rose, but he nodded slowly. "Agreed, with one addition of my own." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a document. "This is the deed to 80 acres that once belonged to you and Ethan. I never sold it after you left." Lucy looked at Ethan in surprise. He appeared equally startled. "The cabin's gone, of course," Clayton continued, "but the land is still there. Consider it included in our arrangement, yours to do with as you please." Emotion welled in Lucy's throat. That small parcel represented the beginning of their life together, the first home they had created. To have it returned was an unexpected gift. "Thank you," she managed, blinking back tears. "We accept your offer, Mr. Pearson." The remaining business was concluded swiftly. Within days, the papers were signed transferring ownership of the vast Blackburn holdings to Clayton Pearson, with the stipulated conditions legally binding. On their final evening in Reading, Lucy visited her father's grave in the small cemetery on a hill overlooking the town. The marble headstone was imposing but simple, bearing only his name, dates, and the inscription, "A Man of Vision." Lucy stood for a long time, one hand resting on her swollen belly, searching for the complex emotions she had expected to feel. But there was only a hollow sadness for a man who had never understood that love couldn't be commanded or controlled. "Goodbye, Papa," she said finally. "I hope you found peace." As she turned to leave, she noticed a small bouquet of wildflowers already placed at the base of the stone. Martha's doing, perhaps, or one of the hands who had respected the hard, driving rancher. Ethan was waiting at the cemetery gate, his tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. "All right," he asked as she approached. Lucy nodded, slipping her hand into his. "Yes, it's finished now." They departed Reading the next morning, but not before Lucy had one final conversation with her stepmother. "Come with us," she urged, clasping Martha's work-worn hands. "There's a place for you in our home." Martha smiled, genuinely touched. "Thank you, dear heart, but my life is here." "I've made peace with it." She pressed a small package into Lucy's hands. "For the children, yours and those to come, so they'll know something of where they came from." Inside the package, Lucy found a small portrait of herself as a child, sitting on her mother's lap. Both were smiling, their matching blue eyes bright with laughter. "I saved it," Martha explained. "Your father wanted to burn everything after you left, but I couldn't let this go." Lucy embraced her stepmother one last time. "Write to us, you're the only family they have besides us." Martha nodded, tears glistening in her faded eyes. "Wild horses couldn't stop me." The journey back to Oregon seemed shorter somehow, as if the weight Lucy had carried for years had lightened her steps. They had sold the Blackburn ranch for a sum that ensured their children and grandchildren would never want. But Lucy found she valued the small parcel of their original land far more than all her father's vast holdings. "What will we do with it?" she asked Ethan as their stagecoach rolled northward. "The 80 acres from Clayton." Ethan considered, his arm protective around her shoulders. "Keep it, I think. Not to use now, but perhaps someday William or this little one might want to know where their parents first made a home together." Lucy smiled, liking the symmetry of that idea. A legacy not of wealth or power, but of beginnings and hope. Their homecoming was joyous, with William racing down the path to greet them, his copper hair gleaming in the sunlight, his small arms outstretched. "Mama, Papa, did you bring me a present?" Lucy laughed, kneeling awkwardly to embrace her son despite her advanced pregnancy. "The best present is seeing you, my darling." Life resumed its comfortable rhythm on their Oregon farm. The cattle flourished, the wheat ripened in the summer sun, and the Lawson home became a center of community gatherings as more families settled in the valley. In late August, just as the first leaves began to turn gold, Lucy gave birth to a daughter. The labor was easier this time, with Martha Henderson attending and Ethan pacing anxiously outside until the first cry announced the baby's arrival. "She's perfect," Lucy whispered when he was finally allowed to enter. "Look at those eyes." The baby gazed up with eyes as blue as a summer sky, not the unfocused newborn blue of William's birth, but a clear, deep color that Lucy knew would remain. "My mother's eyes," she said softly. "And mine." They named her Emma Martha Lawson, and from her earliest days, it was clear she had inherited her mother's spirit and her father's gentle heart. William appointed himself her protector, solemnly explaining the workings of the farm to his infant sister as she lay in her cradle. The years flowed by like the river that bordered their land. The children grew, the farm prospered, and Lucy and Ethan's love deepened with each shared joy and sorrow. 2 more children joined their family, another son, James, born in the winter of 1886, and finally, youngest daughter Sarah, who arrived in the spring of 1889. By the time Lucy reached her 30th birthday, the small cabin where they had begun their Oregon life had expanded into a sprawling farmhouse surrounded by orchards and gardens. Ethan had established himself as one of the most respected ranchers in the region, known for his fair dealings and innovative farming methods. Lucy found her own calling in education, establishing a small school in their home before the community built a proper schoolhouse. She taught the valley's children alongside her own, passing on her love of literature and music. On warm summer evenings, when the day's work was done and the children were abed, Lucy and Ethan would often sit on the porch swing he had built, watching the fireflies rise from the meadow just as they had in those first days of their life together. "Did you ever imagine this?" Lucy asked one such evening, her head resting on his shoulder, their hands entwined. "When you came back for me that night, did you see all this unfolding?" Ethan considered, his thumb tracing circles on her palm as he had done for 20 years. "Not specifically," he admitted. "I just knew I couldn't live without you. Everything else, the children, this land, the life we've built, that was a hope, not a certainty." "A hope fulfilled," Lucy murmured, watching a shooting star trace a bright path across the darkening sky, many times over. Ethan turned to look at her, his face lined now with years of sun and weather, but his green eyes still bright with the same love that had given her the courage to flee her father's house. "Would you do it again, knowing everything, the hardships, the losses, the struggles?" Lucy thought of the frightened girl she had been, cowering beneath her father's belt. The journey from that moment to this had been long and often difficult, marked by fear and pain as well as joy. But every step had led her here, to this man, these children, this life built with love instead of control. "In a heartbeat," she answered, reaching up to trace the beloved lines of his face. "I would choose you, choose us every time." In the distance, an owl called to its mate, and closer at hand, the soft breathing of their sleeping children drifted through open windows. All around them, the land they had nurtured responded with abundance, a testament to what could grow when tended with care instead of force. "Every time," Ethan echoed, gathering her close as the first stars appeared in the vastness above their valley. "For all time." And in that moment, Lucy knew with bone-deep certainty that love, real love, was worth any price, any journey, any struggle. It was worth fleeing one life to build another. Worth the courage to believe in promises whispered under a California sky by a green-eyed cowboy who had come back for her, just as he said he would.